Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Mystery Channel. Tonight, we'll be drifting into the ancient world of giants. Not the creatures of bedtime stories, but the enormous beasts that appear in cultures throughout history. From sacred texts to strange stories in newspapers, the idea of giants has always been with us, quietly lurking in the shadows. Across the world, people have told stories of towering beings who walked before us. Some were remembered as builders, some were feared as outsiders, and others were linked to things far stranger. Unexplained stone structures, abnormal bones, and even ancient lost races. And every now and then, a fossil, a ruin, or an old account seems to open the door just a little wider. Were these stories warnings from the past, distorted memories of real encounters, or signs of something much stranger hiding beneath accepted history? If you enjoy these curious journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. And as the day begins to gently fade away, join me as we explore the mysterious world of giants together. Let's begin. Ancient stories describe giants standing at the edge of human memory. Long before archaeology gave names to vanished peoples, communities were already speaking of beings who were larger, older, and closer to the forces that shaped the world. These figures appear in fireside traditions, sacred writings, carved landscapes, and stories passed down by families who treated them as part warning, part memory. What makes the giant mystery so powerful is how widely it appears. Distant cultures, separated by oceans and time, still imagined a previous age when enormous beings walked the earth. Some were described as ancestors. Others were enemies, teachers, builders, or survivors from a world that ended before our own began. Mainstream explanations often point toward exaggeration, symbolism, or misunderstood fossils. Yet the pattern keeps returning with strange persistence. The question is not simply whether giants existed. It is why the human mind remembers them so often, and why those memories feel so ancient. The Nephilim became one of history's most argued giant bloodlines. In the Hebrew Bible, a short and mysterious passage speaks of beings born from the union of the sons of God and the daughters of men. That brief mention has created centuries of debate, because it seems to describe something that does not fit ordinary human history. Some readers see the Nephilim as mighty warriors whose reputation grew through storytelling. Others imagine them as the descendants of heavenly visitors, fallen beings, or a lost race with unusual power. Later traditions expanded the idea, giving them strange origins and placing them in the shadowy world before the flood. This is why the Nephilim remain so magnetic. The text gives just enough detail to start the mystery, then leaves the door open. Were they legendary heroes, spiritual warnings, or fragments of a forbidden history that survived only in scattered lines and whispered interpretations? Giant skeleton rumors have followed archaeological discoveries for centuries. Across old newspapers, local histories, and community legends, there are accounts of unusually large bones turning up in fields, caves, burial mounds, and construction sites. Many reports were likely exaggerated, misunderstood, or shaped by the sensational style of earlier journalism. Still, the sheer number of them has kept people wondering. Some described skulls, thigh bones, or entire remains that seemed far beyond normal human size. Just as intriguing are the stories that followed. Discoveries were said to vanish, experts were said to arrive, and ordinary people were left with memories that never made it into official records. Skeptics see this as folklore growing around real but ordinary finds. Alternative researchers see a pattern of inconvenient evidence being absorbed, misplaced, or quietly forgotten. Between those views sits a fascinating possibility. Perhaps giant skeleton stories reveal less about one discovery and more about a long public suspicion that history has missing rooms. Cyclops' legends may have begun with mysterious elephant skulls. Ancient people occasionally found enormous skulls buried in the ground, and some of those skulls had a large central opening where the trunk once attached. To someone unfamiliar with elephants, that opening could look like the single eye socket of a monstrous humanoid. This idea offers one of the most fascinating bridges between myth and natural history. The Cyclops of Greek tradition were not just big creatures. They were strange, powerful, and linked to landscapes where ancient bones could have been uncovered. Some explanations say the whole legend may have grown from fossil remains on Mediterranean islands. Others argue the story feels too rich to come from bone confusion alone. Perhaps a fossil sparked the image, and older memories supplied the rest. Either way, the Cyclops reminds us that a mystery can begin when someone finds a fragment of the deep past and tries to explain it with the knowledge they have. The Titans made size feel like a form of cosmic power. In Greek myth, the Titans were not merely large beings standing beside humans. They belonged to an earlier order of existence, older than the familiar Olympian gods and closer to the raw forces of earth, sky, ocean, and time. Their scale was part of their meaning. They represented a world before balance, before temples, before the universe felt organized. When Zeus and the Olympians defeated them, the story became more than a family struggle among divine beings. It became a tale about one age replacing another. That is why the Titans still matter in the mystery of giants. They suggest that enormous size was once used to describe ancient authority, buried power, and forces too vast for ordinary language. Some see them as pure mythology. Others wonder whether such stories preserve distant memories of rulers, monuments, or lost cultures that seemed superhuman to those who came later. Native American traditions remember enormous beings across many landscapes. Throughout North America, different indigenous traditions include accounts of large beings connected to valleys, mountains, deserts, lakes, and hidden places beyond settlement. These stories are not all the same, and they should not be flattened into a single legend. In some traditions, towering figures were dangerous outsiders. In others, they were ancient people, spirit beings, or reminders of a time when the world worked differently. What makes these accounts so compelling is their connection to specific landscapes. They are often tied to caves, unusual rocks, burial sites, or remote regions where ordinary life gives way to deeper memory. Some modern listeners treat them as symbolic teachings. Others believe they may preserve encounters with unusually large groups, extinct animals, or something harder to classify. The mystery grows because these traditions were often carried with care. They were not always told as fantasy. They were sometimes told as inherited knowledge. The Book of Enoch turned giants into a forbidden mystery. Outside the familiar Bible, one ancient text gave the giant story a much stranger shape. It described heavenly watchers descending to earth, taking human wives, and producing enormous offspring who brought chaos into the world. This version did more than explain giants. It connected them with forbidden knowledge, fallen beings, and a broken boundary between heaven and humanity. The result feels almost like an ancient conspiracy narrative, complete with hidden teachings and a world changed by contact from above. Many religious traditions treat the text with caution, and its status varies across communities. That uncertainty only adds to its pull. Some people read it as symbolic writing from a turbulent age. Others believe it preserves a suppressed account of something truly extraordinary. Its giants are not random monsters. They are evidence of a cosmic violation, and that idea has kept the text alive in alternative circles for generations. Megalithic stones still invite whispers about impossible builders. Around the world, enormous stones were cut, moved, lifted, aligned, and fitted with a precision that still amazes visitors today. Official explanations point to human labor, clever engineering, patience, and social organization on a scale that modern people often underestimate. Yet when someone stands beside a stone weighing many tons, the imagination naturally begins looking for another answer. Giants enter that gap. They appear in local legends because giant hands feel like a simple explanation for work that seems beyond ordinary strength. Some traditions say ancient builders were not like us. Others suggest lost tools, vanished sciences, or help from beings whose abilities later became myth. The wonder is not that people invented giants to explain stones. The wonder is that these monuments still feel impossible even after explanations are offered. They make the past seem bigger, more capable, and more mysterious than we were taught to expect. Giant footprints appear in stories from nearly every continent. All over the world, people have pointed to huge impressions in stone, mud, or sacred landscapes and called them the tracks of giants. Some are natural formations. Some are carvings. Some may be misread geological features shaped by erosion, pressure, or imagination over long periods of time. Yet the stories attached to them are often remarkably powerful. A footprint is different from a distant myth. It feels physical. It asks the viewer to imagine a body that could have made it, a stride longer than a person, and a being heavy enough to leave a mark that outlasted generations. In some places, these tracks are tied to saints, heroes, spirits, or ancient giants who crossed the land in a single step. Skeptics see pattern seeking. Believers see evidence hiding in plain sight. Either way, the footprint becomes a thrilling invitation to picture the impossible, as if it once pressed into the earth. Modern giant sightings keep the old legends strangely alive. Giant stories did not remain trapped in ancient books and village folklore. They moved into the modern world through alleged encounters, military rumors, remote expedition tales, and internet legends that spread faster than any campfire story ever could. These accounts often describe unusually tall beings in deserts, mountains, forests, or restricted places where ordinary verification is difficult. Some are almost certainly invented. Others may be misidentifications, tall people, bears standing upright, distorted memories, or stories improved with each retelling. Yet their appeal is difficult to ignore. A modern sighting suggests that giants are not simply a lost chapter. It suggests they might still exist at the edge of the map, hidden by distance, secrecy, or disbelief. That possibility keeps the old legends breathing. The modern mind may be skeptical, but it still loves the thought that something huge, ancient, and unexplained could remain just beyond the reach of proof. Goliath became the most famous giant in biblical storytelling. The story of David and Goliath endures because it is more than a battle between two figures. It is a collision between fear and faith, between overwhelming size and unexpected courage. Goliath appears as a champion whose height, armor, and confidence make him seem almost unbeatable. He stands before armies as a living war, and the drama depends on everyone believing that no ordinary person can face him. Scholars debate his exact size because ancient manuscripts preserve different measurements. That detail makes the story even more interesting because it shows how the giant image shifted across traditions. Some see Goliath as an unusually large warrior whose reputation became legendary. Others connect him to older memories of giant clans in the region. His power in the imagination is undeniable. He gave the world one of its clearest giant archetypes, where size becomes a test of belief itself. King. Og was remembered as a ruler of extraordinary size. In biblical tradition, Og of Bashan stands out because he is not presented only as a battlefield giant. He is described as a king, a survivor, and a figure linked to a bed of astonishing length. That strange detail has fueled speculation for centuries. Was the bed a royal object made to impress visitors? Was it a funerary relic, a symbolic measurement, or a literal clue to his body? The text places him among the last remnants of the Rephaim, which makes him feel like a living echo of an older population. Some interpreters see Og as a memory of powerful warrior elites whose size was exaggerated over time. Others treat him as evidence that giant lineages were believed to persist after earlier catastrophes. What makes Og fascinating is the blend of politics and mystery. He was not just large. He ruled, resisted, and remained unforgettable. The Anakim were described as a people who terrified spies. In the biblical account of the land of Canaan, the scouts return with a report that changes everything. They describe powerful inhabitants, fortified cities, and descendants of the Anakim, who make ordinary men feel small by comparison. The power of the story comes from fear. The Anakim are not introduced through a fossil, a monument, or a distant legend. They enter history as a psychological shock. Their presence becomes the reason an entire generation hesitates at the edge of promise. Some readers understand them as a tall warrior people whose reputation became magnified through panic. Others believe the passage preserves a memory of genuine giant clans known across the ancient Near East. Even the language of the report feels loaded with awe. The spies are not calmly measuring height. They are describing what it felt like to stand before people who seemed to belong to a different scale of humanity. The Rephaim became shadowy giants in ancient Near Eastern memory. The name Rephaim carries a strange weight because it appears in more than one kind of ancient context. Sometimes it seems to describe formidable people associated with old territories. In other places it has connections with the dead, the underworld, or ancestral shades. That overlap gives the Rephaim an eerie place in giant lore. They feel like a people who were remembered after they were gone, but also like figures who drifted into the realm of spirits. Some scholars treat the term carefully, noting that meanings may have shifted across time and language. Alternative interpreters see that very ambiguity as the clue. Perhaps the Rephaim were once a real group whose memory became so distant that they turned into both giants and ghosts. Few names in ancient tradition carry such a mix of physical power and haunted disappearance. They seem to stand where history fades into the other world. Greek mythology filled the earth with giants before heroes arrived. In many Greek stories, the age before familiar civilization is crowded with enormous beings, hybrid creatures, and forces that must be challenged before order can take hold. Giants appear alongside monsters, old gods, and dangerous children of the earth. They are part of a mythic landscape where the world is not yet safe for human settlement. Heroes such as Heracles become famous because they can confront threats that ordinary communities cannot survive. This pattern may reveal how ancient people understood the past. Before cities, laws, and known borders, the world was imagined as larger and more dangerous. Some see the giants as symbols of wild nature or defeated tribes. Others suspect the stories preserve memories of an earlier population, filtered through centuries of myth-making. Their repeated appearance suggests that Greek imagination did not treat giants as random inventions. They were part of the necessary drama of making the world human. Norse giants were powerful beings rather than simple, oversized monsters. In Norse tradition, the giants were not merely big enemies waiting to be defeated. They were complex figures with wisdom, magic, ancestry, and deep ties to the forces outside divine order. The gods fought them, married them, learned from them, and sometimes descended from them. This makes the Norse giant mystery especially rich. The Jotun were not just a race of brutes. They represented the wild edge of existence, where ice, fire, fate, and ancient knowledge gathered beyond the walls of Asgard. Some were beautiful, some were monstrous, some seemed wiser than the gods themselves. Their role suggests that giants once carried a meaning far deeper than size. They were the outside world given a body. They were dangerous because they were necessary. Without them, the Norse cosmos would lose its tension, its origin, and even the final drama of its ending. The Jotun lived beyond the ordered world of the gods. Jotunheim was not simply another kingdom on a mythic map. It was the place where the familiar rules weakened and older powers remained active. The gods of Asgard represented structure, oaths, halls, weapons, and names. Beyond that order stood the Jotun, who belonged to mountains, frost, darkness, fire, and deep ancestral forces. This boundary gives their stories a thrilling charge. Whenever a god crosses into their realm, the journey feels like entering a forbidden zone. Thor travels there to test strength. Odin seeks knowledge there. Loki's ties to that world make him unpredictable from the beginning. Some listeners hear these myths as symbolic geography. Others wonder whether they encode memories of rival peoples living beyond settled communities. The mystery lies in the border itself. The Jotun are always close enough to influence the gods, but far enough away to remain strange, dangerous, and impossible to fully understand. Irish legends claimed giants shaped causeways, lakes, and hills. In Ireland, giants were often treated as explanations for landmarks that seemed too unusual to be ordinary. A strange rock formation, a deep lake, a hill with an unnatural shape, or a path of stones could become evidence of a being whose footsteps changed the land. These stories gave the landscape personality and memory. Instead of seeing nature as random, people imagined huge figures throwing stones, digging earth, building crossings, and leaving marks behind as they moved through the world. The result is a country where folklore and geography feel stitched together. Some explanations point to volcanic processes, glacial movement, and natural erosion. Yet, those explanations do not erase the older feeling. They simply add another layer. The giant becomes a way of saying that the land itself has a story too large for ordinary speech. In that sense, the mystery remains alive every time a place looks made by impossible hands. Fionn mac Cumhaill became linked to Ireland's strangest stone formations. The legendary Irish hero Fionn mac Cumhaill is often connected with tales that turn landscape into adventure. In one famous tradition, he is associated with a stone pathway reaching towards Scotland, a place now known for its remarkable columns. The story turns geology into character. Fionn becomes strong enough to build across the sea, clever enough to survive a rival giant, and memorable enough to bind a natural wonder to a human-shaped tale. What makes this so fascinating is how the legend works on several levels. It entertains, explains, and preserves a sense of ancient connection across the water. Scientists describe cooling lava and hexagonal formations. Folklore answers with rivalry, courage, and enormous strength. Neither version fully cancels the other for those who love mystery. The stones still stand there, and the mind can hold both possibilities at once. One belongs to geology. The other belongs to wonder. The giant's causeway still feels like folklore turned into geology, On the coast of Northern Ireland, thousands of stone columns rise in patterns so precise that many visitors find them hard to accept as purely natural. The official explanation points to ancient volcanic activity, cooling lava, and the way rock contracts into geometric forms. That explanation is elegant, but the place still feels constructed when seen up close. It looks like steps, foundations, or a broken road built for someone far larger than us. That is why the legend of a giant crossing to Scotland fits so easily into the imagination. The landscape seems to ask for a builder. Some places are mysterious because we lack explanations. This one is different. It remains mysterious, even with a powerful explanation in hand. The causeway shows how a natural wonder can become so strange that folklore feels less like decoration and more like a second language for describing what the eyes cannot quite believe. Cornwall's giant legends placed enormous figures along cliffs and castles. Along the rugged coast of southwest England, giant stories cling to headlands, ruins, and old stone places with unusual stubbornness. Cornwall's folklore does not treat these beings as distant decorations. It places them in named occasions, with habits, rivalries, homes, and reputations. Some were said to live in castles above the sea. Others were imagined striding over moors, stealing livestock, or throwing rocks across valleys. These tales may have helped explain dramatic landscapes, especially places where cliffs, boulders, and ancient walls already looked shaped by unnatural force. But there is another layer as well. Cornwall has long felt like a borderland, facing the Atlantic and holding older Celtic memories beneath later history. In that setting, giants become more than oversized villains. They become reminders that the land once belonged to powers beyond the village, beyond the church bell, and beyond the neat version of the past. Jack the Giant Killer carried giant stories into popular imagination. The old tale of Jack matters because it took giant lore out of local tradition and pushed it into the wider world of printed stories, theatre, and childhood memory. Here was a clever young hero facing huge enemies who should have been impossible to defeat. The giants were frightening, but they were also strangely human. They had castles, treasures, bad tempers, and weaknesses waiting to be discovered. That made them perfect for storytelling. Some versions connect Jack to Cornwall, which ties the tale back to a landscape already filled with giant legends. Others read him as a folk symbol for ordinary people defeating oppressive powers. Yet the story also preserves something older and stranger. It imagines a time when giants were common enough to be hunted, named, tricked, and remembered. Through Jack, the ancient giant became familiar, exciting, and unforgettable. He helped turn hidden folklore into a shared cultural obsession. Welsh folklore remembered giants as builders, enemies, and ancient rulers. In Wales, giant traditions often feel woven into the land itself. They appear near mountains, standing stones, lakes, and old hill forts, where the past already seems close to the surface. Some legends describe giants as hostile figures who could threaten entire communities. Others present them as powerful builders connected with stones too large for ordinary hands. In certain stories, they behave almost like forgotten kings, ruling rough places before the current human world settled into shape. This variety is what makes the Welsh material so fascinating. The giants are not one single type of creature. They are a whole category of ancient presence. They help explain ruins, mark boundaries, and give personality to landscapes that feel older than written history. Some people hear moral lessons in these tales. Others hear fragments of memory, perhaps from conflicts, migrations, or encounters that later generations could only describe in enormous terms. The Basa John guarded mountain forests in Old Basque tradition. In Basque folklore, the Basajon was not simply a large wild man wandering without purpose. He was often described as a hairy forest being connected with mountains, caves, herds, and hidden knowledge. In some tales, he protects livestock and warns shepherds when storms or wolves are near. In others, humans steal secrets from him, including skills linked with farming, metalworking, or everyday survival. That makes him different from many giant figures who exist only as threats. He feels older, wiser, and closer to the natural world than ordinary people. The Basque country has one of Europe's most distinctive cultural histories, and the Basajon seems to belong to that deep sense of separateness. Some interpret him as a memory of pre-modern forest dwellers. Others see an echo of something stranger, a powerful mountain presence that ancient communities treated with respect. His mystery lies in being both frightening and helpful. The Patagonian giants fascinated explorers for hundreds of years. At the southern end of South America, European travelers began reporting unusually tall people, and the idea of Patagonia as a land of giants quickly gripped the imagination. Maps, travel accounts, and rumors turned a remote region into a stage for one of exploration history's most persistent mysteries. Some descriptions claimed heights that seem impossible. Others may have reflected genuine encounters with tall indigenous groups viewed through fear, surprise, and exaggeration. The important point is how quickly the story became accepted in the minds of distant readers. Patagonia was already near the edge of the known world for Europeans. Giants made it feel even more like a place where normal rules had weakened. Later measurements and calmer accounts reduced the legend, but they never fully erased it. The Patagonian mystery shows how geography, expectation, and a single startling encounter can combine into a giant story that lasts for centuries. Early sailors described towering people near the edge of the world. For sailors crossing unfamiliar seas, the far south seemed like a place where ordinary knowledge no longer offered much comfort. Storms, cold waters, strange coastlines, and unknown peoples created the perfect setting for reports that sounded almost impossible back home. When crews described towering inhabitants, listeners in Europe were ready to believe that distant lands might contain forms of humanity unlike anything known. These accounts were shaped by fear, wonder, translation problems, and the pressure to make voyages sound extraordinary. Yet they were not always simple inventions. Sailors did meet people with different clothing, posture, diet, and physical presence. From a frightened deck, at a distance, a tall hunter on open ground could become something larger than life. The mystery is not only whether the descriptions were accurate, it is how the ocean itself helped enlarge them, turning human encounters into legends from the edge of the map. Ferdinand Magellan's crew helped launch the mystery of Patagonian giants. During the great voyage that circled the globe, members of Magellan's expedition recorded encounters in the far south that helped create the European legend of gigantic Patagonians. Their accounts described people who seemed extraordinarily tall, and later retellings amplified that impression into something almost mythic. The name Patagonia itself became tied to the idea of oversized inhabitants. Because the expedition was already historic, its observations carried extra weight. Readers were not dealing with a tavern rumor. They were hearing from a voyage that had crossed into regions few Europeans could imagine. Over time, the reported heights shifted, grew, and became entangled with fantasy. Yet the original spark remained powerful. A real meeting between radically different worlds became a story about scale, astonishment, and human limits. Magellan's crew did not simply chart oceans. They helped place giants into the geography of the early modern imagination. Some giant reports may have exaggerated the height of unfamiliar peoples. When travelers entered new regions, they often measured other cultures through surprise rather than accuracy. A tall person could seem gigantic if seen beside smaller crewmen through heavy clothing, across uneven ground, or in a moment of fear. Reports then passed from witness to writer, from writer to publisher, and from publisher to readers hungry for marvels. Each step could enlarge the figure a little more. This does not make the reports worthless. It makes them human. They reveal how the unknown changes perception. Many alleged giants may have been real people whose height, posture, dress, or reputation made them seem extraordinary to outsiders. That explanation can sit beside the mystery rather than destroy it. After all, exaggeration often begins with something memorable. The question becomes what stood at the center of the story before imagination stretched it. Sometimes the most useful clue is not the claimed height, but the awe it produced. Other giant accounts remain too detailed to dismiss completely. Some reports of enormous people are vague, but others contain surprisingly specific details about clothing, speech, tools, burial places, injuries, or the reactions of witnesses. That level of description has made them difficult for enthusiasts to abandon. A simple, tall tale often floats without anchors. These accounts sometimes feel anchored to names, dates, locations, and physical objects that make them harder to wave away. Of course, detail can be invented. Old writers knew how to make a story convincing. Still, there are cases where multiple descriptions appear to overlap in ways that keep the imagination alert. Maybe these were misunderstood tall tribes. Maybe they were rare individuals turned into legends. Or maybe a few reports point towards something history has not categorized properly. The fascination comes from that stubborn middle ground. They are not strong enough to prove a hidden race, but they are often too vivid to feel meaningless. The Lovelock Cave legends tell of red-haired giants in Nevada. In Nevada, one of the most famous American giant traditions centers on a cave associated with stories of red-haired beings and ancient conflict. The legend has become a magnet for alternative history because it combines oral tradition, archaeology, unusual artifacts, and the haunting atmosphere of a desert cave. Some accounts describe a people who lived apart, frightened neighboring communities, and eventually disappeared after violent clashes. Mainstream interpretations are far more cautious, and they do not accept the sensational versions as proven history. Still, the tale continues because it contains exactly the ingredients that keep mysteries alive. There is a real place. There are old stories. There are objects found in the area. There is also a gap between official explanation and popular suspicion. For some listeners, the cave feels like a sealed doorway into a past where America's deserts were home to beings far stranger than textbooks allow. Paiute oral traditions describe the CT-Ka as dangerous outsiders. Among the stories connected with the Lovelock region, the CT-Ka are often described as a troubling group remembered through Paiute tradition. Modern retellings have sometimes turned them into a giant race, though the details vary depending on who is telling the story. What matters is the feeling of separation. They are remembered as outsiders who did not belong comfortably within the surrounding human world. Some accounts link them with marshlands, conflict, and distinctive hair. Others treat later giant claims with caution, noting that oral traditions can be reshaped when outsiders reinterpret them. This makes the mystery delicate and fascinating at the same time. It asks us to listen to indigenous memory without forcing it into a modern conspiracy mold. Perhaps the CT-Ka were a real hostile group. Perhaps they became enlarged through retelling. Perhaps the truth sits somewhere in between, where memory and myth protect an old wound. Mysterious sandals from Lovelock Cave inspired theories about huge inhabitants. Among the artifacts associated with the Nevada cave were woven sandals, some of which have been described in popular accounts as unusually large. That detail captured the imagination because footwear feels intimate. A bone can be misidentified and a story can be exaggerated, but a sandal invites the mind to picture the foot that wore it. Alternative writers have used those objects to argue for people of extraordinary stature. More cautious interpretations point out that sandals can appear oversized for many reasons, including design, wear, measurement confusion, or the needs of people moving across marshy ground. Yet the image remains irresistible. A large woven sandal lying in a cave seems almost like a calling card from someone who stepped out of history before anyone could measure them properly. Whether it proves giants or not, it gives the Lovelock mystery a physical texture that pure legend does not have. The Kandahar giant story became a modern military campfire legend. One of the strangest modern giant tales claims that soldiers in Afghanistan encountered an enormous being in rugged terrain. The story usually includes a cave, a dangerous confrontation, unusual physical features, and a rapid official cover-up. It spread through interviews, online discussions, and retellings that gave it the feel of a classified incident slipping into public view. There is no solid public evidence that confirms the event, which is why skeptics place it firmly in the realm of modern legend. Yet its popularity says something important. The old giant myth has adapted to military secrecy, remote war zones, and distrust of official narratives. Instead of ancient kings or buried bones, the setting becomes helicopters, special forces, and restricted reports. It feels like folklore wearing modern equipment. For believers, that makes it chilling. For others, it shows how easily an ancient fear can survive by changing its costume. Internet folklore turned one alleged giant encounter into a global mystery. In earlier centuries, a giant story might travel slowly through letters, sermons, taverns, and local newspapers. Today, one dramatic account can circle the world in days. The modern web has changed the way giant legends form because every retelling can add details, images, commentary, and supposed insider testimony. A single claim may become a video, then a thread, then a documentary segment, then a memory shared by people who heard it from someone they trust. That process can make weak evidence feel stronger than it is. It can also preserve unusual stories that might otherwise vanish. This is why online giant lore is so fascinating. It operates like a digital campfire where skepticism and belief sit side by side. Some people arrive looking for proof. Others simply feel the thrill of possibility. The mystery grows not only from the alleged encounter, but from the way the world now keeps such stories alive. Smithsonian giant conspiracy claims refuse to fade from alternative circles. Few giant theories are as persistent as the claim that major institutions once collected enormous human remains and then hid, lost, or destroyed them. The Smithsonian often sits at the center of these accusations because it represents official memory in the public imagination. To believers, a museum is not just a building full of exhibits. It is a gatekeeper deciding which past is allowed to exist. Critics argue that these claims rest on misread newspapers, hoaxes, and stories repeated without documentation. Yet the conspiracy survives because it satisfies a powerful suspicion. Many people feel that history has been edited, simplified, and cleaned of anything too disruptive. Giant bones become the perfect symbol of forbidden evidence. Whether the claims are true or not, their endurance shows a deep hunger for a past that feels larger than the approved timeline. The idea refuses to vanish because it speaks to distrust as much as discovery. Old newspaper clippings often reported giant bones with astonishing confidence. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers regularly published stories about strange discoveries, including oversized skeletons and unusual burial finds. These articles often used a tone that sounded surprisingly certain. They gave locations, measurements, and witness names, which makes them feel persuasive when read today. But newspapers of that era also prized attention-grabbing stories, and fact-checking was not always as strict as modern readers might assume. Some reports were jokes. Some were mistakes. Some were copied from other papers until no one could trace the original source. Still, the clippings remain fascinating because they show how common giant discoveries once seemed in public conversation. Readers were apparently willing to believe that enormous human remains might turn up in a field or mound without overturning the world. That normality is the eerie part. For a while, giant bones were not fringe internet lore. They were printed beside weather, politics, and town news. Some 19th century papers treated giant discoveries as serious news. Many old articles did not present giant skeleton claims as fantasy. They described them with the same practical style used for mining reports, court cases, and local events. A farmer dug into a mound. Workers uncovered bones near a road. A skull measured beyond expectation. Officials or physicians were sometimes named as witnesses. This format gave the stories authority, and modern readers often find that unsettling. Were editors simply careless, or were they reporting discoveries that later disappeared from formal records? The answer probably varies case by case. Some articles may have misunderstood animal remains. Others may have inflated ordinary human burials. A few might preserve genuine local testimony that was never followed up. The fascination lies in the tone. These papers were not always winking at the reader. They sometimes sounded as if giants were a legitimate possibility. That confidence gives the old clippings their strange afterlife. Missing giant skeleton stories created distrust around official archaeology. The most powerful part of many giant bone accounts is not the discovery itself. It is the disappearance that follows. Again and again, stories claim that unusual remains were sent to a museum, university, or government office, only to vanish from view. To mainstream researchers, this is usually the weak point, where rumor replaces evidence. To alternative investigators, it is exactly where the story becomes suspicious. Missing objects create a vacuum, and the imagination rushes in. Perhaps the bones were misclassified. Perhaps they were discarded because they seemed unimportant. Perhaps the original story was never accurate. Or perhaps, as believers argue, something was removed because it challenged accepted history. The pattern has become almost a myth of its own. Discovery, excitement, expert arrival, silence. That sequence has done more to fuel suspicion than any single measurement. It turns every lost artifact into a possible doorway that someone else may have closed. The Cardiff giant fooled crowds with one of America's strangest hoaxes. In the late 19th century, a stone figure was uncovered in New York and presented as the petrified body of an ancient giant. Crowds came to see it, arguments erupted, and money poured in. The object was eventually exposed as a deliberate fake, carved and planted to deceive. Yet the hoax worked because it met a public desire already waiting for proof. People were living in an age of biblical debate, scientific discovery, and expanding show business. A giant turned to stone seemed to touch all three at once. It could be religious evidence, natural wonder, and entertainment. The Cardiff story is not just a lesson about gullibility. It is a window into the moment when Americans wanted the ancient world to break through the soil in spectacular form. Even after exposure, the fake remained famous. That may be the strangest part. The dream survived the fraud. P.T. Barnum turned the Cardiff giant into rival spectacle. When the original stone giant became a sensation, P.T. Barnum wanted to exhibit it. After failing to acquire the real hoax, he displayed his own version and created a competing attraction. the situation became almost absurd because audiences were drawn into a battle between a fake giant and another fake giant. Barnum understood something essential about mystery entertainment. People do not always pay only for certainty. They pay for astonishment, argument, and the chance to stand near a story everyone is talking about. His involvement turned the Cardiff affair from a local deception into a national spectacle. It also revealed how giant lore could be commercialized without losing its pull. Even when the public suspected trickery, the image of a buried giant was too tempting to ignore. Barnum's copy helped prove that the idea itself had value. The giant did not need to be real to become powerful. Giant hoaxes reveal how badly people wanted the legends proven. Every successful giant hoax exposes a hidden appetite. People are not fooled merely because a fake object exists. They are fooled because the fake answers a desire already inside them. A carved body, an altered photograph, an oversized bone, or a staged discovery all promise the same thrill. They suggest the old stories were not just stories. Hoaxes exploit trust, but they also reveal belief. They show that many people are ready to accept evidence for a larger human past, especially when official history feels too small or too tidy. Skeptics often treat hoaxes as the end of the discussion. Yet they may also be clues about cultural longing. Why do giant fakes keep appearing? Because the possibility keeps feeling meaningful. A false artifact can still point toward a real fascination. It tells us that somewhere beneath doubt, people still want the ground to open and reveal the impossible. Gigantopithecus shows that enormous ape-like beings truly existed. The fossil record contains a creature that sounds almost invented for giant lore. Gigantopithecus was an enormous ape known from fossil teeth and jaws, and it once lived in parts of Asia. It was not a giant human, but it proves something important. Nature really did produce primates on a scale that can feel astonishing. For people drawn to mystery, that fact opens a tempting door. If one huge ape existed, what else might have lived in forests that left only scattered traces? Mainstream science places Gigantopithecus firmly in prehistory, not as a hidden modern creature. But the imagination naturally wonders whether ancient encounters with large primates could have influenced later wild man stories. Fossils do not need to prove every legend in order to change the mood. They remind us that the Earth once held beings that would seem unbelievable if we knew them only through folklore. Fossil evidence proves nature once produced primates of incredible scale. A single, oversized tooth can change how we picture the ancient world. When researchers identify remains from giant primates, they reveal that the family tree of life once included forms far more dramatic than most people imagine. This matters for giant mysteries because it grounds at least part of the wonder in reality. Huge primates were not impossible. They were biological fact. They lived, fed, moved through forests, and vanished long before modern rumor gave them new names. Some people take this as support for hidden hominid theories. Others see it as a reminder that fossils can inspire legends without matching them exactly. The deeper fascination is scale. Evolution has experimented with bodies far larger, stranger, and more powerful than everyday experience suggests. When giant traditions speak of beings at the edge of humanity, fossil primates make the idea feel less like pure fantasy and more like a door left slightly open. Some speculate Bigfoot legends preserve memories of ancient giant apes. The Bigfoot mystery often centers on modern sightings, footprints, sounds, and shadowy figures in forests. But one of the more intriguing ideas looks backward. Perhaps stories of large, hairy beings are not simply inventions or misidentified bears. Perhaps they preserve a distant memory of giant primates that once shared landscapes with early humans or with the ancestors of human storytelling. This idea is not accepted as proven science, but it has a powerful appeal. It connects folklore with fossil evidence and gives old campfire accounts a prehistoric depth. The creature in the woods becomes not just a monster, but a possible survivor image from deep time. Maybe no living population remains. Maybe the legend is a cultural echo of encounters too old to verify. Still, the connection between ancient apes and modern wild man lore feels strangely natural. It suggests that some myths may be memories wearing the clothing of mystery. Sasquatch stories often describe a being taller than any human. In the forests of the Pacific Northwest, Sasquatch accounts tend to emphasize height, strength, and an uncanny ability to avoid capture. Witnesses often describe a figure that looks almost human, but not quite. It walks upright, moves with startling confidence, and seems built for terrain that slows ordinary people down. The most compelling reports are not always the loudest ones. They are the calm descriptions from hunters, hikers, loggers, or residents who know the woods and still insist they saw something unusual. Skeptics point to bears, hoaxes, and the power of expectation. Believers point to footprints, consistent behavior, and the sheer size of remote wilderness. What makes Sasquatch different from many giant legends is its modern intimacy. It is not sealed in a mythic past. It stands at the tree line, close enough to frighten witnesses, yet distant enough to remain unproven. Himalayan Yeti legends blur the line between giant and guardian. High in the Himalayas, stories of the Yeti carry a different atmosphere from many Western monster tales. The creature is often linked to snowfields, monasteries, remote valleys, and dangerous passes where humans move carefully through overwhelming terrain. Some accounts describe a large ape-like being. Others make it more spiritual, almost a presence of the mountains themselves. This blend is what gives the Yeti its enduring power. It is not merely something to be captured. It belongs to a landscape that resists ordinary control. Expeditions have searched for tracks, hair, and testimony, but certainty remains elusive. Skeptics suggest bears, folklore, and misidentification. Others think the stories may point to an unknown animal or a surviving memory of something once real. In either case, the Yeti remains one of the world's great threshold beings. It stands where biology, belief, and sacred geography meet. The Amurs of Central Asia adds another wild man mystery. Across parts of Mongolia, the Caucasus, and Central Asia, stories describe the Amurs as a human-like wild being living beyond settled life. Unlike some gigantic legends, the Amurs is often presented as rough, elusive, and close enough to humanity to feel unsettling. It may be hairy, strong, speechless, or shy, depending on the account. Some stories place it in mountains and remote grasslands where survival itself requires toughness. The mystery has drawn interest because it does not always sound like a supernatural monster. It sometimes sounds like a hidden cousin, a remnant people, or an ancient branch of humanity pushed to the margins. Mainstream views tend to treat the accounts as folklore, mistaken identity, or cultural memory. Yet the idea persists because Central Asia still feels vast enough to hold secrets. The Amurs asks a strange question without needing to speak. How much of the human story might have lived outside the village? Russian folklore described forest giants who avoided ordinary human life. Across Russian and Siberian traditions, the deep forest often becomes a world of presences that do not belong to villages, churches, or roads. Among them are large wild beings, sometimes connected with the Leshy, who can confuse travelers, guard animals, or change size in unsettling ways. These figures are not always giants in a simple physical sense. They are expressions of the forest as an intelligence older than human settlement. that makes them fascinating within giant lore. Their size can shift because they represent a place that feels immeasurable. A person entering the woods crosses from order into uncertainty, where tracks vanish and sounds travel strangely. Some people interpret these beings as spiritual guardians or warnings about wilderness. Others wonder whether stories of forest giants could preserve encounters with isolated humans, large animals, or memories from prehistoric landscapes. In these traditions, the giant is not buried. It watches from between the trees. Australian Aboriginal stories include large beings tied to ancient landscapes. Aboriginal Australian traditions are incredibly diverse, and many are connected to specific country, ancestral journeys, lore, and sacred places. Within that vast story world, some accounts include large beings whose actions shaped landforms, marked boundaries, or left signs in the landscape. These are not casual monster tales. They are part of deep cultural systems that carry meaning, responsibility, and memory. For outsiders, it is important not to flatten them into simple giant folklore. Yet they remain fascinating for anyone exploring how human cultures remember enormous presences in the land. Some beings may be ancestral figures. Others may be warnings, creators, or powers associated with places where ordinary behavior must change. The mystery is not whether they match European ideas of giants. It is that size, landscape, and ancient memory come together again. Across the world, when people speak of the oldest times, they often speak in forms larger than ordinary life. The Yowie remains Australia's towering cousin to Bigfoot lore. In modern Australian mystery culture, the Yowie is often described as a large, hairy being seen in forests, bushland, and remote regions. Reports vary widely. Some witnesses describe something ape-like. Others describe a more human-shaped figure with unusual speed, strength, or smell. The Yowie has become part of the broader global family of wildman mysteries, yet it has its own character because Australia's landscape gives it a distinctive stage. Dense bush, ancient ranges, and isolated tracks make disappearances into terrain feel believable. Skeptics point to misidentification, hoaxes, and imported Bigfoot expectations. Believers argue that the consistency of some sightings suggests a mystery worth taking seriously. What makes the Yowie especially intriguing is its position between older indigenous story worlds and modern eyewitness culture. It feels both ancient and contemporary. It is a creature of headlights, hiking trails, camp stories, and the unsettling sense that the bush may still be watching. South American legends describe giant beings deep in remote forests. Across South America, stories of enormous human-like beings often gather around places where the forest feels almost unreachable. These accounts do not always describe the same figure. In some regions, the being is a dangerous wanderer. In others, it is a hidden tribe member, a guardian, or a survivor from a time before ordinary settlements. What makes these legends so compelling is the geography around them. Dense vegetation, river systems, caves, and mountain edges create a world where distance can hide almost anything from casual view. Some people explain the stories through fear of unfamiliar groups or encounters with large animals seen briefly through foliage. Others wonder whether the forest preserved memories of isolated peoples who stood outside known society. The mystery lives in that green distance. When a witness says something huge moved between the trees, the jungle itself seems to protect the answer. Amazon stories sometimes speak of enormous guardians beyond known settlements. In parts of the Amazon, oral traditions and frontier rumors sometimes describe large beings who protect hidden places, sacred zones, or regions where outsiders are not meant to go. These figures may not behave like monsters. They can seem more like warning signs with bodies, standing between the familiar riverbank and a deeper world of rules most visitors do not understand. The Amazon is perfect ground for such stories because its scale still humbles modern imagination. Whole communities can remain difficult to reach, and countless sounds, tracks, and shadows become mysteries under the canopy. Some listeners interpret these guardians as spiritual presences tied to land and ancestry. Others see possible memories of tall forest dwellers, unknown groups, or encounters distorted by fear and distance. Either way, the idea is powerful. The forest does not simply contain secrets. In these stories, it appoints watchers to keep them. African traditions preserve tales of giants linked to mountains and caves. Across Africa, giant traditions appear in many different cultural settings, often connected with dramatic landscapes that feel older than everyday life. Mountains, caves, cliffs, and remote valleys become natural homes for beings of unusual scale. Some stories speak of powerful ancestors. Others describe dangerous figures, hidden people, or creators who shaped features of the land. It would be a mistake to treat all these accounts as one legend, because the continent holds an enormous range of languages, histories, and spiritual worlds. Yet a pattern still stands out. Great size is often tied to old power. A cave becomes more than a shelter. A mountain becomes more than a height. It becomes a place where memory gathers. Some people see these giants as symbolic figures that explain geography or moral lessons. Others wonder whether they preserve faint echoes of encounters, migrations, or forgotten communities whose reputations grew larger with time. The Bondo giant stories still circulate in parts of Central Africa. Reports associated with the Bondo region have long interested people who collect accounts of unusually large forest beings. In some retellings, these creatures are described as massive, elusive, and connected with remote woodland areas where outsiders rarely travel with ease. The details vary, which makes the subject slippery, but that slipperiness is part of the appeal. Central African forests have inspired many mystery traditions because they are difficult to enter, difficult to survey, and filled with animals whose sounds and movements can confuse even experienced travelers. Some people compare Bondo stories with global wild man legends. Others suggest they may come from misunderstood wildlife, local cautionary tales, or exaggerated reports passed between communities and visitors. The mystery is not just the creature itself. It is the sense that modern maps can name a region without fully knowing what lives in its most hidden places. Some giants were remembered as teachers rather than destroyers. Not every giant in world tradition arrives as a threat. In several stories, large beings bring knowledge, warn communities, guard animals, or introduce skills that ordinary humans later depend on. That reversal is important because it challenges the easy idea that giants are only monsters. Sometimes they stand above humanity in wisdom as much as height. They may understand weather, tools, plants, animals, or hidden laws of the land. In that role, the giant becomes a strange elder rather than an enemy. Some interpretations treat this as a way of honoring earlier peoples whose abilities seemed advanced to newcomers. Others see the teacher giant as a memory of contact with outsiders who brought useful knowledge and then disappeared into myth. There is also a more speculative reading. Perhaps ancient storytellers imagined that civilization itself arrived through beings who were not fully human as we understand the word today. Other giants were said to demand tribute from frightened villagers. Many communities imagined giants not as distant wonders, but as immediate problems. In these tales, a huge being might demand food, livestock, labor, or treasure from people too afraid to resist. That detail makes the stories feel grounded in social memory. Tribute is not random. It belongs to real patterns of power. where weaker groups submit to stronger ones in order to survive. A giant, then, may represent an oppressor made enormous through storytelling. But the possibility does not end there. Some legends describe a presence so physically overwhelming that negotiation becomes the only option. Heroes who defeat such figures often become famous because they end a cycle of fear. These stories may encode memories of raiders, landlords, rival clans, or natural disasters. They may also express the terrifying thought that something bigger than society once stood outside the village gate and expected payment. Giant legends often appear near mountains, caves, and lonely coastlines. Certain landscapes seem to invite giant stories again and again. Mountains suggest height and hidden interiors. Caves feel like entrances to older worlds. Remote coastlines face horizons where strangers, storms, and strange remains can arrive without warning. When people live beside such places, it is natural for imagination to give them inhabitants worthy of their scale. A towering cliff almost asks for a towering figure. A deep cavern feels ready to conceal bones, tools, or voices from another age. Some explanations are psychological. The human mind gives shape to places that feel dangerous or difficult to control. But there may also be historical reasons. Marginal landscapes often shelter refugees, hermits, outlaws, and isolated groups who become exaggerated in local memory. The giant becomes a marker of the edge. Wherever the map grows rough and ordinary life becomes uncertain, stories begin to grow taller. Enormous burial mounds inspired speculation about forgotten giant races. Across parts of the world, large ancient mounds have stirred the suspicion that they were not built for ordinary people. Their size alone can feel like a clue. When a mound rises from a field or forest, it suggests effort, ceremony, and a memory important enough to reshape the ground. In North America especially, some early settlers and writers wondered whether such structures belonged to a vanished race, unlike known indigenous peoples. Those ideas were often shaped by prejudice and misunderstanding, and they ignored the real achievements of mound-building cultures. Yet the giant theory survived because the mounds looked so impressive. People imagined oversized rulers, buried champions, or entire populations lost before recorded history. The mystery today is layered. The monuments show extraordinary human organization, but they also reveal how easily awe can turn into speculation when later observers cannot accept the abilities of the people who came before. Some ancient tombs were built large enough to fuel strange theories. A tomb does not need to contain a giant body to suggest giant possibilities. Sometimes the architecture alone is enough. A long chamber, a massive stone doorway, or a burial space built on a monumental scale can make visitors wonder who it was really meant to honor. Official explanations often point to ritual status, communal use, symbolic design, or the desire to impress the living rather than accommodate the dead. Still, the physical experience matters. When someone steps inside a huge, ancient tomb, the body feels small, and the imagination begins to measure the past differently. Some people have taken such spaces as evidence that earlier humans were larger. Others see them as houses for the soul, the ancestors, or beings whose importance required exaggerated scale. The fascination lies in how architecture changes belief. A room built too large for ordinary life can make ordinary history feel incomplete. Dolmens across Europe became connected with giants in local folklore. Across Europe, prehistoric stone structures known as dolmens often attracted stories of giants, witches, heroes, or supernatural builders. Many are made from heavy slabs placed in arrangements that look simple, until one imagines moving the stones without modern machinery. Local people gave these monuments memorable names, sometimes calling them giant graves, giant tables, or giant houses. Archaeology links many dolmens to burial practices and ancient ritual landscapes. Folklore adds another layer by asking who had the strength to lift such weight in the first place. That question is easy to understand. A dolmen standing in a field feels both human-made and strangely beyond ordinary effort. Some legends may have grown from real ignorance about prehistoric builders. Others may preserve respect for communities whose skills were forgotten. The giant explanation turns engineering into personality. Instead of anonymous labor, the stones become traces of enormous hands. Stone circles were often blamed on beings too large to forget. Stone circles have a way of making visitors feel watched by the past. Their purpose can involve ceremony, astronomy, burial, gathering, or meanings now lost. But folklore often reaches for giants when faced with such deliberate mystery. In some regions, circles were said to be dancers turned to stone. In others, they were the work of beings strong enough to carry massive rocks, as if they were small burdens. The giant explanation makes emotional sense, because the stones seem arranged by an intelligence that is present yet unreachable. People could see the work, but not the workers. Some circles line up with skies, seasons, or sacred landscapes, which has only deepened speculation about lost knowledge. Were giants a simple answer for heavy construction, or a memory of master builders whose identity vanished? The stones do not speak, and that silence leaves room for enormous possibilities. The builders of Baalbek inspired claims of lost giant engineering. At Baalbek in Lebanon, some of the largest worked stones from the ancient world have inspired wonder for generations. The platform stones are so huge that even modern visitors struggle to picture how they were quarried, moved, and set in place. Conventional explanations point to Roman engineering, organized labor, ramps, rollers, and practical ingenuity. Yet the scale has made Baalbek a favorite location for alternative theories. Some people suggest forgotten machines. Others imagine a much older foundation made by a civilization with knowledge later lost. Giants also enter the conversation because the stones look as though they belong to builders beyond human strength. The mystery is intensified by the site's layered history, where temples, older sacred associations, and massive foundations overlap. Baalbek does not require a giant race to be astonishing. But it is easy to see why anyone standing there might feel that ordinary explanations sound too small. Massive foundation stones in Lebanon still challenge the imagination. Near Baalbek, huge quarried blocks lie, as if history paused before finishing its work. One famous stone remains in the quarry, so enormous that it has become a symbol of ancient ambition. Its presence raises practical questions that feel almost impossible to satisfy at a glance. Why cut something so large? How was it meant to move? What kind of project required such size? Engineers can offer plausible methods, and ancient builders were more capable than modern arrogance sometimes admits. Yet the visual shock remains. A single block can look less like a building material and more like a statement aimed at the future. Alternative thinkers use these stones as evidence of lost techniques or help from beings of unusual power. Even without accepting those ideas, the imagination understands them. The stones challenge our sense of scale, and scale is the doorway through which giant theories often enter. Saksai Huaman's fitted stones sparked theories about giant strength and tools. Above Cusco in Peru, the walls of Saksai Huaman contain huge stones fitted with remarkable precision. Some blocks have irregular shapes that lock together in ways that seem both practical and artistic. The official story credits skilled Inca engineering, quarrying, transport, and patient stone shaping. That explanation is impressive on its own. Still, the site has attracted theories about lost technology, softened stone, ancient visitors, and builders with abilities far beyond those usually granted to the past. Giants enter this conversation because the stones are not merely heavy. They look controlled. They seem placed by a confidence that feels almost superhuman. Visitors often ask how people without modern machines could create such a wall in mountainous terrain. The answer may be human brilliance. Or, as some prefer to imagine, Sacsayhuaman may preserve the signature of a forgotten knowledge that later cultures inherited but never fully explained. Some megaliths look impossible without machines, giants, or lost methods. The giant mystery often begins with a simple reaction. Someone sees a stone so large, so well placed, or so strangely transported that the accepted explanation feels emotionally unsatisfying. Around the world, megaliths trigger that reaction. Archaeologists can explain many techniques using ramps, sledges, ropes, levers, water, and labor. But the mind still struggles when the numbers become enormous and the setting looks unforgiving. That gap between explanation and experience creates room for alternative ideas. Some people imagine ancient cranes made from forgotten materials. Others picture sound, vibration, or earth energies used to reduce weight. Giants are the oldest solution of all because they turn the engineering problem into a living image. Large hands move large stones. The simplicity is powerful. Whether literal or symbolic, giant builders show how deeply human beings want the wonders of the past to have a face. The Long Man of Wilmington became a chalk giant mystery. On a hillside in Sussex, the Long Man of Wilmington stands as a tall human figure cut into the landscape. His outline is clear, yet his origin remains debated. Some have seen him as ancient. Others argue for a more recent creation, reshaped by restoration and changing interpretation. That uncertainty gives him a special place in giant lore. He is not a buried skeleton or a reported creature. He is a figure drawn onto the earth itself, visible from afar, holding staffs as if marking a threshold. People have connected him with ritual, fertility, guardianship, astronomy, and local identity. The evidence does not settle neatly into one answer. That is why he continues to fascinate. The Long Man turns the hillside into a body, and the body into a question. He may be art, symbol, memory, or something stranger. His mystery is measured not in height alone, but in endurance. The Cerne Abbas giant still puzzles historians with its origin. In Dorset, the Cerne Abbas giant is one of Britain's most famous hill figures, partly because of its bold form, and partly because nobody agrees completely on why it was made. Some once argued for an ancient fertility figure or a pagan survival. Others have suggested a later political joke, local symbol, or early modern creation. Recent study has complicated the story rather than ending it, because the figure seems to have passed through periods of change, neglect, and revival. What makes it so intriguing is how confidently it occupies the landscape while refusing to explain itself. It is huge, unmistakable, and strangely elusive. Local folklore gave it powers and meanings that may not match its origin, but they became part of its identity anyway. The giant shows how a human-made image can gather mystery over time, until the question of who made it becomes as fascinating as the figure itself. Britain's hill figures show how giants became part of the landscape. Across Britain, chalk figures and hillside forms reveal a striking idea. The land could be treated like a canvas large enough for beings, symbols, and messages meant to be seen from a distance. Some figures are ancient, others are more recent, and many have been repaired or reinterpreted over time. Their importance to giant lore lies in how they merge body and place. A giant carved into a hill is not just an image of a large person. It is a way of making the earth itself participate in the story. People walking below may not see the full shape, which adds to the mystery. The figure belongs to a viewpoint beyond normal human scale. Some people see ritual purpose. Others see territorial signs, folk art, or coded memory. Together, these hill figures show that giants did not always need to walk the land. Sometimes they were made from it. Giant chalk figures may have marked power, fertility, or forgotten rites. When a community cuts a huge figure into chalk, the act itself feels meaningful. It takes planning, labor, maintenance, and agreement that the image should remain visible. That is why giant hill figures attract so many interpretations. Some may have marked local power or identity. Others may have been linked to seasonal gatherings, fertility beliefs, boundary making, or rituals whose details have vanished. The trouble is that evidence rarely preserves intention clearly. A figure can survive while its original meaning disappears. Later generations then add new stories, and those stories become part of the site. This is how a giant can move from ritual to folklore, from folklore to tourism, and from tourism back into mystery. The chalk body becomes a container for many meanings at once. It may not prove ancient giants existed, but it proves that humans chose to write giant forms directly onto the skin of the earth. Fossil bones once helped create legends of buried giants. Before modern paleontology, enormous bones were deeply confusing. Someone digging in a riverbank or hillside might uncover a massive limb bone, tooth, or skull fragment with no clear way to identify it. Without knowledge of extinct elephants, mammoths, dinosaurs, or giant ground sloths, the explanation often turned toward beings already known from stories. Giants made sense. They were familiar, dramatic, and large enough to match the evidence. This does not make ancient people foolish. It shows that they were trying to solve a real puzzle with the ideas available to them. In some cases, fossil finds may have strengthened existing legends. In others, they may have started new ones. The ground itself seemed to testify that huge bodies once existed. Even now, when science can classify many remains, the emotional effect remains similar. A fossil bone still feels like a message from a world that was once much larger. Mammoth remains were sometimes mistaken for bones of enormous humans. A mammoth skeleton can be astonishingly human, shaped in fragments if the viewer has no full picture of the animal. A thigh bone, rib, or skull piece found alone could easily invite the wrong conclusion in earlier times. People who already believed in giants might see confirmation immediately. A huge bone meant a huge body. A huge body meant an ancient being of extraordinary size. This kind of mistake may explain many old reports of giant remains, especially when discoveries were made by farmers, miners, or laborers rather than trained specialists. Yet the mistake itself is fascinating because it reveals how fossils fed mythology. Mammoths were real giants of the animal world. Their remains carried the scale that legends needed. In a way, the giant was not entirely imaginary. The bones did come from enormous beings, just not enormous humans. The mystery changed form once the animal was named. Ancient people may have built myths around unexplained giant fossils. Imagine finding a massive skull weathering out of a cliff with no museum, textbook, or expert nearby to explain it. The discovery would demand a story. Ancient communities were skilled at weaving strange evidence into meaningful traditions, and fossils may have become proof of monsters, giants, dragons, ancestral beings, or destroyed races. This idea is powerful because it gives myth a physical trigger. A legend might not begin as pure invention. It might begin with someone holding a fossil and asking what kind of world could produce such a thing. Over time, the answer becomes sacred, dramatic, and unforgettable. Some myths may contain distorted observations of extinct life, filtered through memory and imagination. That does not make them false in a simple sense. It makes them attempts to understand deep time before deep time had a scientific name. Giant fossils gave ancient storytellers something real to wonder about. Cyclops stories gained new life through skulls with central openings. The idea that ancient elephant skulls helped inspire one-eyed giant legends remains one of the most memorable explanations in mythology. The large nasal opening in the center of the skull can look uncannily like a single eye socket if the observer does not know what an elephant skull is. On Mediterranean islands, where dwarf elephants once lived and fossils could emerge from the ground, such finds may have seemed like the remains of monstrous humanoids. This explanation is persuasive because it connects a specific physical object to a specific mythical feature. Yet it does not drain the story of wonder. It deepens it. A fossil becomes a seed, and imagination grows a giant from it. The Cyclops then becomes a meeting point between geology, mistaken anatomy, and ancient storytelling. Even when explained, the legend still feels charged, because the skull really did look like evidence of something impossible. Dinosaur bones likely strengthened beliefs in monstrous beings beneath the earth. Long before dinosaurs were scientifically named, their bones could still appear from cliffs, deserts, and eroded hillsides. To anyone who found them, they would have seemed like remains from a terrifying race of creatures beyond ordinary experience. These discoveries may have fed stories of giants, dragons, earth monsters, and beings destroyed in some ancient age. Dinosaur fossils are especially important because their size and strangeness exceed familiar animals. A mammoth bone might suggest a huge beast. The dinosaur bone might suggest an entire lost world. Some people have argued that dragon traditions in particular may have been influenced by fossil finds. Giant lore may have borrowed from the same source of wonder. The Earth gave up pieces of enormous bodies, and human imagination tried to rebuild them. Before paleontology, the reconstruction did not need to be anatomically correct. It needed to answer the fear and amazement created by the bones. Some giant legends may preserve distorted memories of extinct animals. A community does not need to see an animal alive in order to remember it. Stories can outlast direct experience, especially when they are tied to places, warnings, and strange remains. This raises a fascinating possibility. Some giant traditions may preserve blurred memories of extinct creatures that once shared the world with humans or were known through bones discovered later. A huge sloth might become a hairy giant. A mammoth might become an ancient person of great size. A towering bird might become a sky monster. Over generations, the animal shape could become more human because human-shaped stories are easier to remember. Skeptics would call this imaginative transformation. But transformation is not the same as emptiness. It means something real may sit beneath the legend, altered by time. The giant becomes a memory that forgot its original body, yet kept its sense of scale. Island gigantism shows nature can create oversized creatures in isolation. On islands, evolution can take surprising turns. Some animals grow larger because they face fewer predators, different food pressures, or unusual ecological conditions. This process has produced creatures that seem out of proportion compared with their mainland relatives. For giant mysteries, island gigantism matters because it proves the natural world can create shocking size under the right conditions. It also helps explain why islands are so rich in strange folklore. Isolated places often preserve unusual animals, unusual memories, and unusual stories. Some people extend the idea speculatively and ask whether ancient human groups, or human-like beings, could have developed unexpected traits in isolated environments. There is no need to accept every theory to appreciate the wonder. Islands are laboratories of the improbable. They show that the ordinary rules of size can bend when life is cut off from the wider world and left to experiment. Tiny islands sometimes produced animals that seemed wildly out of scale. One of nature's strangest habits is making small places home to surprisingly large creatures. Islands have produced giant birds, giant reptiles, and oversized mammals whose existence can feel almost like a challenge to common sense. These animals were not myths. They were real outcomes of isolation, adaptation, and time. That reality makes island folklore especially intriguing. When people reached such places, they sometimes encountered animals unlike anything their ancestors had known. Even after those animals vanished, bones, eggs, tracks, and stories could remain. A tiny island with a giant creature creates a powerful contradiction. The land feels too small for the life it once held. This tension may have helped fuel tales of beings that did not fit normal categories. In giant lore, scale is everything. Islands remind us that the world has repeatedly produced life that sounds impossible until the evidence is placed directly in front of us. The giant ground sloth once towered through the ancient Americas. The ancient Americas were once home to enormous ground sloths, some large enough to rear up at a height that would have stunned any human observer. These creatures were not predators in the usual monster story sense, yet their size, claws, and unfamiliar shape could have made them unforgettable. Some lived during periods when humans were present in the Americas, which raises an exciting possibility. Early people may have seen them, tracked them, feared them, hunted them, or told stories about them long after the animals disappeared. A giant sloth standing upright could easily become a strange hairy being in cultural memory. It would not look like a bear, a human, or anything familiar. The fossil record gives this speculation a real foundation without proving any single legend. It tells us that the ancient landscape contained creatures large enough to become myths simply by being seen. Ancient humans may have encountered creatures that felt giant enough. The prehistoric world was not a small world. Early humans and their ancestors lived among animals that could make modern wildlife seem modest by comparison. Mammoths, giant sloths, massive birds, huge reptiles, and formidable predators shaped the emotional landscape of survival. When people told stories afterward, they did not need to invent scale from nothing. They had inherited the memory of beings that could crush trees, leave enormous tracks, or dominate entire valleys. This matters because giant legends may be rooted in the feeling of living beside overwhelming life. A creature did not have to be human-shaped to become part of a giant tradition. It only had to make people feel small. Some stories may have shifted animal power into human form over generations. Others may have preserved the awe more directly. The ancient world gave humanity many reasons to believe that size itself was a kind of mystery. Giant birds once ruled skies and plains across several continents. The idea of enormous birds sounds like fantasy until the fossil record confirms it. Different parts of the world once held birds far larger than anything most people see today. Some were flightless giants that dominated open landscapes. Others inspired speculation about huge wingspans and terrifying shadows overhead. These birds matter to giant lore because they expand the category beyond human-shaped beings. The world's giants were not only walkers with hands. Some had beaks, claws, and bodies built for an entirely different kind of power. For ancient people who found huge eggshells or bones, the conclusion could easily become mythic. Stories of thunderbirds, sky beings, and monstrous birds may draw energy from the real memory of oversized avian life. Science explains extinction, classification, and environment. Folklore preserves the shock. Together, they reveal a planet where the sky and ground once belonged to creatures that made human scale feel fragile. The elephant bird became one of Madagascar's vanished wonders. Madagascar once held birds so large that their eggs could dwarf anything a modern farmyard could produce. The elephant bird did not fly, and it did not need to. It lived on an island already famous for life that evolved in unusual directions, cut off from the mainland by distance and time. For anyone exploring giant mysteries, this creature is a powerful reminder that nature has built beings that sound impossible until their remains are placed in a museum case. Its extinction also adds a haunted layer. People may have known these birds, collected their eggs, told stories about them, and then watched them fade from the living world. Some imagine that memories of such creatures helped feed later tales of giant birds and oversized beings. The bird itself needs no exaggeration. It was real, immense, and strange enough to make the lost world feel close. The moa made New Zealand's past feel impossibly strange. Before modern settlement changed the islands forever, New Zealand was home to towering flightless birds that moved through forests without mammalian predators. The moa came in different sizes, but the largest examples were astonishing enough to reshape the imagination. Here was a land where birds filled roles that mammals held elsewhere, and where size developed under conditions unlike most of the world. For giant lore, the moa matters, because it proves that isolated landscapes can produce living surprises on a scale that feels mythical. Early people encountered these birds, hunted them, and left behind bones that later generations would study with amazement. Some of the largest remains can make a person wonder what it felt like to stand beside one in life. Not every giant mystery needs a hidden race or a secret tomb. Sometimes the impossible past was simply walking through the trees, leaving tracks in soft ground. The Thunderbird legend may echo memories of enormous flying creatures. Across parts of North America, stories describe a mighty bird associated with storms, power, and the sky itself. The Thunderbird belongs to deep cultural traditions and should not be reduced to a fossil theory. Still, its scale has fascinated people who wonder whether legends of huge winged beings may have drawn energy from real encounters, ancient remains, or memories of extinct birds. Some point to giant condors, teratons, or other prehistoric flyers as possible sources of inspiration. Others see the Thunderbird as a spiritual figure whose meaning reaches far beyond natural history. The mystery becomes richer when both views are allowed to sit side by side. Perhaps the legend speaks of sacred power, and perhaps the old world also contained creatures large enough to make the air seem alive with force. A shadow passing overhead can become a memory, and a memory can become a being of thunder. Giants often appear when cultures explain disasters, ruins, and deep time. When people face things too large for ordinary explanation, giant stories often rise to meet them. A shattered city, a strange valley, a buried wall, or a flood-carved landscape can feel like evidence of powers greater than human life. In many traditions, giants belong to the age before the present order. They build too much, desire too much, anger the heavens, or fall when the world changes. This makes them useful figures for explaining catastrophe without turning the past into empty chaos. They give disaster a body and history a previous population. Some people see this as mythic thinking, a way to make natural events memorable. Others wonder whether these stories preserve encoded recollections of real upheavals, including floods, earthquakes, migrations, or ruined civilizations. The giant becomes a bridge between geology and memory. Through him, deep time stops being abstract and becomes almost personal. Flood myths sometimes place giants before a world-changing catastrophe. In many ancient traditions, The great disaster comes after an earlier age filled with beings who were stronger, stranger, or more dangerous than ordinary humans. Giants often stand on the far side of that boundary. They belong to the world before the waters rise, before society resets, before survivors begin again with fragments of memory. This pattern is one reason giant lore feels so charged. It suggests that unusual beings were not merely living alongside humanity. They were part of the reason the old world could not continue. Some readers treat this as moral storytelling, where size becomes a symbol for pride and corruption. Others see the possibility of a dim memory tied to real climate events, regional floods, or vanished settlements beneath coastlines and silt. Whether literal or symbolic, the placement matters. Giants are remembered as part of the world that ended, which makes every flood story feel like a locked archive. Some traditions say giants belong to an age before ordinary people. Many cultures divide time into ages, and the earliest ages are often filled with beings who are larger, longer-lived, wiser, or more dangerous than the people telling the story. Giants fit naturally into that structure. They become the first inhabitants, the failed ancestors, or the older race that shaped the land before human society became familiar. This idea is powerful because it makes giants feel less like random monsters and more like former owners of the earth. Some traditions say they disappeared through war, flood, divine judgment, or slow decline. Others imagine them retreating to mountains, caves, islands, or hidden realms. The official view usually treats these accounts as symbolic memory. But some listeners hear something more provocative. Perhaps human history contained echoes of encounters with groups later absorbed into myth. The idea of a prior age keeps returning because it gives the present world an unsettling preface. The idea of a hidden giant race appears across alternative history. Among people who doubt the standard timeline, few ideas are more thrilling than the possibility of an enormous human lineage suppressed, forgotten, or misidentified. The theory usually gathers clues from old newspaper accounts, oversized structures, unusual burials, folklore, and claims of missing bones. On their own, many pieces are weak or disputed. Together, believers argue, they form a pattern too persistent to ignore. The appeal is easy to understand. A hidden race would transform giants from symbols into a lost chapter of humanity. It would mean that old stories were not childish exaggerations, but cultural memories of people who once stood beside us. Skeptics see this as cherry-picking, driven by the desire for a grand secret. Yet the idea continues because it offers a larger past than textbooks usually allow. It turns scattered mysteries into one breathtaking possibility. Maybe the human family was once stranger than we were told. Forbidden archaeology claims suggest inconvenient discoveries were quietly removed. In alternative circles, there is a recurring suspicion that certain finds never reach the public because they would disturb accepted history. Giant remains, strange tools, anomalous burials, and impossible artifacts often appear in these claims. The story usually follows a familiar path. Someone uncovers something extraordinary. Authorities arrive. The object is taken away. Then the trail goes cold. Mainstream researchers often reject these accounts because they lack documentation, and many examples collapse under scrutiny. But the narrative survives because it taps into a deeper concern. Who controls the past, and what happens to evidence that does not fit? The phrase, forbidden archaeology, does not simply describe artifacts. It describes distrust. For believers, missing proof is not a weakness. It is the very sign of concealment. That circular logic can be dangerous, but it is also dramatically compelling. It makes every sealed archive and lost report feel like part of the mystery. Ancient astronaut theories often connect giants with visitors from the sky. one of the boldest interpretations of giant lore, claims that ancient stories of enormous beings may point to contact with non-human intelligences. In this view, gods, watchers, star people, and sky visitors are not merely spiritual figures. They may be memories of advanced outsiders who altered human development and left behind hybrid descendants. Giants become evidence of that contact, standing between Earth and the heavens, in both body and origin. Mainstream historians do not accept this as proven, but the idea has enormous storytelling power. It links sacred texts, global mythology, unexplained monuments, and bloodline legends into one sweeping mystery. Some people believe ancient people used divine language to describe technology they could not fully understand. Others think the theory projects modern science fiction onto old beliefs. Either way, the connection is unforgettable. It makes giants feel not only ancient, but cosmic, as if their footprints began somewhere beyond the clouds. Some fringe writers describe giants as hybrid beings from the heavens. In the more speculative corners of giant lore, the most dramatic claim is that these beings were not simply tall humans. They were something mixed, born from contact between humanity and powers from above. This idea often draws from apocryphal texts, mythic genealogies, and stories where divine or celestial figures cross into the human world. The result is a giant who carries two identities at once. He belongs to Earth through his mother, but to the sky through his mysterious father. That dual origin makes him unstable, powerful, and difficult for ordinary society to absorb. Skeptics see these hybrid theories as imaginative readings of symbolic material. Believers see repeated patterns that look suspiciously consistent across cultures. The fascination comes from the boundary being broken. If such beings existed, even in story, they represent the fear that humanity was once altered by forces it could neither understand nor control. Star people legends sometimes overlap with stories of enormous ancestors. Some traditions speak of beings who came from the sky, taught skills, founded lineages, or shaped the earliest communities. In a few modern interpretations, these sky-connected figures are compared with giant ancestors, especially when stories describe unusual height, power, or knowledge. This overlap attracts people who love the idea that ancient humanity received guidance from somewhere beyond ordinary civilization. It is important to remember that star people traditions have their own cultural meanings and should not be flattened into one theory. Still, the pattern is intriguing. Again and again, the earliest teachers are described as coming from above, from far away, or from a realm not easily reached by humans. Some people see metaphor, spirituality, and ancestry. Others hear the echo of contact. When the teacher is also remembered as larger than life, the mystery grows. The giant ancestor becomes not just old, but possibly connected to the sky itself. The Watchers became linked to giant offspring in apocryphal tradition. In certain ancient writings outside the standard biblical canon, the Watchers are heavenly beings who descend to Earth and cross a forbidden boundary. Their children become giants, and the world is thrown into disorder. This story has fascinated generations because it gives giant lore a clear supernatural mechanism. The giants are not unexplained anomalies. They are the result of contact between realms that were supposed to remain separate. The tale also connects them with forbidden knowledge, including teachings about metalwork, adornment, warfare, and celestial secrets. That detail makes the story feel like a lost file on civilization itself. Some readers see it as a warning about corruption and pride. Others view it as a coded memory of outside intervention. What makes the Watchers so compelling is that they place giants at the center of a cosmic scandal. The mystery is no longer only about size. It is about who crossed the boundary first. giant bloodlines are sometimes imagined as surviving through royal families. A more unusual branch of giant speculation claims that ancient lineages did not disappear completely. Instead, they allegedly passed into elite families, heroic genealogies, or royal houses that guarded special ancestry across generations. This idea often grows from old claims that kings were descended from gods, giants, culture heroes, or beings with extraordinary qualities. In official history, such genealogies are usually understood as political myth-making. Rulers strengthened authority by linking themselves to powers beyond ordinary people. Yet alternative thinkers ask whether every royal origin story should be dismissed so quickly. They point to repeated claims of unusual ancestry and wonder whether fragments of older bloodline traditions survived inside legend. The idea is difficult to prove, but it is undeniably dramatic. It suggests that the age of giants did not simply end. It thinned, hid itself in dynasties, and became part of the secret language of power. Old maps and travel tales placed giants in unexplored regions. For centuries, map makers and writers filled the blank edges of the world with marvels. Giants were among the beings most often placed where certainty ended. Distant islands, southern coasts, northern mountains, and unexplored interiors became homes for oversized peoples, because nobody nearby could easily disprove the claim. To modern eyes, this may look like fantasy, but in earlier times, the unknown world genuinely felt capable of anything. Travelers returned with reports of unfamiliar animals, customs, and landscapes that sounded impossible but were sometimes true. That made giant stories harder to dismiss. Maybe one more strange report would turn out to be real as well. The placement of giants on the margins tells us how humans think about mystery. When a region is not fully known, imagination populates it with beings large enough to match the uncertainty. The giant becomes a landmark of ignorance, wonder, and desire. Renaissance scholars debated giants as history, theology, and natural wonder. During the Renaissance, learned people did not always treat giants as simple fairy tale figures. They argued over ancient texts, biblical passages, classical stories, fossils, and reports from travelers. For some, giants were part of sacred history. For others, they belonged to natural philosophy, perhaps explained by climate, diet, degeneration, or unusual births. Still others saw them as evidence that the ancient world had been physically greater than the present. This debate matters because it shows that giant belief once occupied serious intellectual space. It was not confined to children's stories or village gossip. Scholars tried to classify giants, measure them, explain them, and fit them into a world where theology and emerging science still overlapped. The mystery today is partly historical. How did something once debated by educated minds become pushed to the fringe? And what forgotten questions were left behind when that shift happened? Museums once displayed oversized bones as proof of ancient giants. In earlier centuries, collections of curiosities often included large bones identified as remains of giants. Some were displayed in churches, cabinets, museums, or noble collections, where visitors could stand before them and feel that legend had become tangible. Later study often reclassified these bones as belonging to whales, elephants, mammoths, or other large animals. Still, the original displays were important. They show how physical evidence and inherited belief reinforced one another. A huge bone needed a story, and giants were already waiting in the cultural imagination. The display case made the story feel official. Today, we may smile at the mistakes, but there is something moving about them too. People were not inventing wonder from nothing. They were responding to real remains that exceeded ordinary experience. Those mistaken exhibits remind us that the line between science and folklore was once much softer, and giant bones stood directly on that line. Churches sometimes preserved giant ribs that later proved animal remains. In parts of Europe, enormous ribs and other bones were sometimes kept in churches as relic-like objects connected to giants, saints, flood survivors, or ancient marvels. A congregation might pass them for generations with a mixture of pride and awe. The bone became part of local identity. It gave the town a visible link to deep time, sacred history, or extraordinary beings mentioned in old tradition. Later examination often revealed that such bones came from large animals rather than giant humans. But the correction does not erase the fascination. Why were these bones preserved so carefully? Why did communities feel they belonged in sacred spaces? Perhaps they served as reminders of the flood, proof of biblical wonders, or warnings about a world before divine order. The animal origin answers one question while opening another. These objects show how a single bone could become a bridge between faith, folklore, and natural history. Giant armor in castles can be more theatrical than practical. Visitors to old castles sometimes see enormous suits of armor and imagine warriors of impossible size. The reality can be more complicated. Some oversized armor was made for display, pageantry, tournament drama, or the status of noble households. A suit did not always need to fit a battlefield body in order to impress a guest. Size itself could communicate power. A lord who displayed giant armor was surrounding himself with the image of strength beyond ordinary men. That does not mean every large suit is meaningless, since unusually tall individuals certainly existed. But the theatrical function matters. It shows how the idea of the giant was used even when no giant was present. A castle could stage intimidation through metal and scale. The visitor would look up and feel small. In that moment, the legend performed its work. The armor became a silent actor in the drama of authority. Extremely tall humans helped keep giant beliefs within living memory. Every so often, a person is born whose height seems to cross the boundary between ordinary life and legend. Such individuals have appeared in courts, circuses, medical records, local stories, and family memories. Their existence made giant belief feel plausible because people did not have to imagine height in the abstract. They could see someone towering in a doorway, posing beside average adults, or needing special clothing and furniture. Before modern medicine explained many growth conditions, extraordinary height often carried an atmosphere of wonder and uncertainty. Communities might treat such people with admiration, fear, curiosity, or exploitation. The giant law, they served as living proof that the human body could sometimes move far beyond expectation. If one person could grow so tall, some asked, why not whole families in the ancient past? The leap may be speculative, but it begins with something real enough to stand in a room. Robert Wadlow showed that real human height can become legendary. The tallest reliably recorded modern person became famous not because he belonged to myth, but because he showed how astonishing human biology can be without leaving the boundaries of documented reality. His life was measured, photographed, reported, and remembered, which gives giant discussions an important anchor. Here was no carved hoax, no lost skeleton, and no rumor from a distant cave. Here was a real individual whose height made ordinary objects look strangely small. Yet the human side matters just as much as the measurement. Extraordinary stature brought public attention, physical challenges, and a life shaped by a body that never fit the world around it. For mystery lovers, his story widens the imagination without requiring conspiracy. It proves that genuine giants of a kind have walked among us, even in recent history. The legend is not ancient here. It wears a suit, stands for photographs, and leaves records behind. Medical gigantism offers one grounded doorway into giant traditions. Some giant stories may have grown around real people with rare growth conditions. When the body produces too much growth hormone at certain stages, a person can become dramatically taller than those around them. In an ancient village or medieval town, such a person might have seemed touched by gods, cursed by spirits, descended from giants, or marked for leadership and spectacle. Medical explanation does not make the story dull. It makes it more human. A rare condition could become a legend after only a few generations, especially if the person was a warrior, ruler, outcast, or traveler remembered by many communities. The grounded doorway is important because it shows how myth and biology can cooperate. Not every giant account needs to be invented, and not every explanation requires a hidden race. Sometimes one extraordinary body can leave a memory large enough for folklore to keep expanding. Acromegaly may explain some historical descriptions of unusually large figures. When abnormal growth continues after the bones have mostly matured, the body can change in ways that would have seemed deeply mysterious before modern diagnosis. Hands, feet, jaw, brow, and facial features may enlarge, creating an appearance that storytellers could easily magnify into something giant-like. Historical figures described as huge, heavy-boned, or unusually formed might sometimes fit this pattern, though it is difficult to diagnose the dead from words alone. The possibility is fascinating because it offers a natural source for some legends without reducing every story to illness. A person with these traits could be remembered as formidable, blessed, frightening, or superhuman depending on their role in society. If they held power, their body might become part of their political image. If they lived on the margins, it might become part of local fear. Acromegaly reminds us that the border between medical reality and mythic reputation can be surprisingly thin. The emotional power of giants may come from childhood perception. When we are small, adults already seem like giants. Doorways, tables, staircases, and voices belong to a world built above us. That early experience may leave a deep imprint on the imagination. Giants return us to the feeling of looking upward at power before we had words to challenge it. This may be why giant stories work across so many cultures. They dramatize vulnerability in the simplest possible form. A giant does not need complicated magic to frighten us. He only needs to be larger. Yet the same size can also comfort us if the giant becomes a protector, teacher, or ancestor. The mystery here is psychological rather than archaeological, but it is no less interesting. Perhaps giants endure because they translate one of humanity's first memories into story. We all begin life surrounded by beings who can lift us, feed us, command us, and block out the light. Giants make human history feel older, stranger, and less settled. The moment giants enter the story, the past becomes unstable in the best possible way. Ruins no longer seem like ordinary ruins. Old texts begin to feel like fragments of hidden reports. Landscapes acquire former inhabitants who may have built, fought, vanished, or retreated before recorded history became confident. This is why giant lore is so addictive. It expands the scale of human memory. Instead of a neat timeline moving from simple people to modern civilization, it suggests lost ages, strange lineages, and chapters that official accounts may have flattened. Skeptics may say giants are metaphors, mistakes, or exaggerations. Believers may say they are evidence of a suppressed world. Between those positions sits the real magic of the topic. Giants make us look again. They ask whether the past is truly settled, or whether history still contains rooms we have not been allowed to enter. Every culture seems to place giants just beyond the firelight. There is something striking about where giants live in the human imagination. They are often nearby, but not fully inside the safe circle. They stand in the mountains above the village, in forests beyond the fields, across the water, under the hill, or in the time before memory becomes clear. This placement matters. Giants mark the edge between what people know and what they fear may be waiting. They are close enough to shape behavior, but distant enough to remain mysterious. A child hears about them at night. A traveler thinks of them near a lonely pass. A community names a stone after them, long after the original story has faded. Some people see this as the geography of fear. Others see it as the preservation of forbidden knowledge through folklore. Either way, the giant's position beyond the firelight keeps him alive. He remains where certainty things. Giant stories often protect boundaries between the familiar and unknown. In many traditions, giant tales are attached to borders. They appear near dangerous paths, forbidden caves, sacred hills, old ruins, or places where children are warned not to wander. This gives them a practical function. A story about a huge being can keep people away from cliffs, deep water, unstable ground, enemy territory, or spiritually sensitive sites. But practical warnings can still carry deeper mystery. Over time, the warning becomes a presence. The presence becomes a character. The character becomes a legend that outlives the original danger. Some people believe this explains many giant accounts. Others wonder whether the warnings were placed there because something unusual really was associated with those locations. The fascinating part is how giants enforce the edge. They do not merely frighten people for entertainment. They guard the line between home and wilderness, safety and risk, ordinary knowledge and whatever waits beyond the path. The same giant patterns appear in places that never met. One of the strongest reasons people keep returning to giant lore is the repetition. Distant cultures describe enormous beings as builders, ancestors, enemies, teachers, or survivors of a previous age. They link them to stones, caves, mountains, floods, ruins, and forbidden knowledge. Of course, human imagination can produce similar ideas independently. Big bodies are an obvious symbol for big power. Yet the echoes are still difficult to ignore. When stories repeat across continents, the mind starts asking whether they share more than psychology. Did ancient migrations carry giant memories with them? Did fossil discoveries trigger similar explanations in many regions? Did encounters with unusually tall groups become magnified in separate places? Or is there a deeper pattern beneath human myth-making itself? The mystery does not require one answer. The repetition is the clue, and the clue keeps widening every time another tradition places giants near the beginning of the world. The mystery grows when folklore, fossils, and ruins overlap. A giant story is interesting on its own, but it becomes far more powerful when different kinds of evidence seem to gather in the same place. A cave has a legend. Nearby, unusual bones are reported. A landscape holds enormous stones. Local people remember beings who are larger than ordinary humans. Each piece may have a simple explanation when studied alone. Together, they create an atmosphere that feels harder to dismiss. This overlap is where giant mysteries thrive. Folklore gives the narrative. Fossils provide physical scale. Ruins supply human effort that looks almost impossible. Skeptics warn that combining weak clues can create a false pattern. Believers answer that official thinking often breaks mysteries apart, so the larger picture can never be seen. The tension between those views is exactly what makes the subject compelling. Giants live in the space where separate clues begin to whisper to one another. Giants may be memories, metaphors, hoaxes, or hidden history. The truth about giants may not be one thing. Some stories surely grew from exaggeration. Some may have been inspired by fossils, unusual medical conditions, tall warriors, or misunderstood monuments. Some were deliberate hoaxes created for money, attention, or amusement. Others may preserve symbolic lessons about pride, danger, power, and the old world before order. Yet there remains a possibility that keeps the topic alive. Mixed among the mistakes and metaphors, there could be memories of real encounters that no longer fit our categories. That is why the giant mystery refuses to collapse under one explanation. It is too widespread, too adaptable, and too emotionally powerful. It belongs to religion, folklore, archaeology, psychology, and fringe speculation all at once. The safest answer may be that giants are many mysteries wearing one enormous shape. The most exciting answer is that one of those mysteries may still be waiting for proof. The oldest giant stories still leave room for impossible possibilities. After all the arguments, explanations, hoaxes, fossils, texts, and legends, the giant mystery remains strangely open. We can explain many pieces, but not the entire fascination. Why did so many cultures imagine earlier beings of enormous size? Why do unusual stones, caves, bones, and old writings keep pulling the subject back into public curiosity? Why does the idea feel less like a monster story and more like a missing chapter? Perhaps giants are the natural language of awe. Perhaps they are memories reshaped by thousands of years of retelling. Perhaps they point to rare humans, extinct animals, lost peoples, or spiritual beings that belong to older ways of seeing the world. And perhaps, somewhere in the gaps, there is something stranger still. That is the final pull of the subject. It does not force belief. It simply leaves the door open and asks what might be standing on the other side. As we come to the end of tonight's journey, we can let the mystery of giants settle around us like an old story told beside a low fire. We have wandered through ancient memories, sacred texts, remote forests, lost islands, stone ruins, cave legends, strange fossils, and rumors that never quite stopped breathing. We began with the idea that giants stand at the edge of human memory, appearing again and again in the places where history becomes uncertain. They rose from scripture as the Nephilim, the Anakim, the Rephaim, and the towering figure of Goliath. They moved through older books and forbidden traditions, where watchers came down from the heavens, and giant offspring became part of a world that seemed to tremble before a great catastrophe. And then we followed them into myth. We saw the Titans of Greece, immense beings from an earlier order of the cosmos. We crossed into Norse worlds, where the Jotun lived beyond the walls of the gods, not as simple monsters, but as beings of knowledge, danger, ancestry, and elemental force. We stepped into Ireland, Cornwall, Wales, and the high places of Britain, where giants shaped causeways, guarded cliffs, left their names on stones, and became part of the land itself. There were giants who built. There were giants who ruled. There were giants who taught. And there were giants who stood at the edge of villages, forests, caves, and coastlines, reminding ordinary people that the world was wider than the path home. We drifted through the strange reports of Patagonian giants, where early sailors returned from the far south, with stories that made Europe imagine a land of towering people near the edge of the world. We visited Nevada's Lovelock Cave legends, with their red-haired outsiders, oversized sandals, and desert silence. We listened to the modern campfire stories of the Kandahar giant, where ancient fear found a new setting among caves, soldiers, helicopters, and rumors of official secrecy. And all along the way, there was that familiar question. What if even a small part of it was true? Not every story needs to be literal to matter. Some giants may have begun as exaggerated memories of tall warriors or feared outsiders. Some may have grown from fossil bones discovered before anyone knew how to name extinct animals. Some may have been created by hoaxes, misunderstandings, old newspapers, or the deep human desire to believe that the past was larger than we were told. But some stories remain stubborn. They gather around real places. They cling to stones, caves, mountains, and ruins. They appear in cultures separated by seas, languages, and centuries. And even when we explain one piece, another piece remains waiting in the dark. We touched the world of megaliths, where enormous stones seem to ask questions without speaking. Baalbek, Sacsayhuaman, ancient dolmens, stone circles, foundation blocks, and hill figures all invited us to imagine builders with lost tools, forgotten knowledge, or strength beyond the ordinary. Perhaps human beings were simply more capable than we sometimes remember. Perhaps the past held techniques that vanished without leaving clear instructions. Or perhaps the giant, whether real or symbolic, is the shape our minds give to work that feels too great for common hands. We also met nature's own giants. The elephant bird of Madagascar, the moa of New Zealand, the giant ground sloth of the Americas, huge primates known only from teeth and jaws, fossil animals that once made the Earth feel like a place built on a different scale. These creatures remind us that the impossible has existed before, not as rumor, not as legend, but as life that walked, nested, fed, vanished, and left traces behind. And perhaps that is one of the most comforting things about this mystery. The world has always been stranger than it first appears. The ground beneath us is not empty. It is layered with memory. Beneath roads, gardens, cities, fields, and quiet hills, there are bones of creatures that would have filled our dreams if we had seen them alive. There are ruins of people who knew skies, rivers, and stones in ways we may never fully recover. There are stories that survived because someone, somewhere, felt they were too important to let go. So now, as the facts fade, let the questions remain, without needing answers. Let the giant footprints become only soft impressions in the mind. Let the old stone circles stand under a dim sky. Let the mountains keep their secrets. Let the caves stay cool and silent. Let the ancient maps curl at the edges, still marking unknown places beyond the firelight. There is nothing more you need to solve tonight. No theory needs to be chosen. No conclusion needs to be reached. The mystery can stay open. It can rest beside you, unresolved and harmless, like an old book closed gently on a bedside table. Perhaps giants were memories. Perhaps they were metaphors. Perhaps they were rare human lives, fossil shadows, hidden peoples, spiritual warnings, or echoes of a world before ours felt settled. And perhaps the reason they still fascinate us is simple. They make the past feel alive. They remind us that human history is not just a line of dates and discoveries. It is also a landscape of wonder, rumor, fear, hope, and possibility. It is full of doors left ajar, footsteps half covered by dust, and stories that still turn their faces toward us when the night grows quiet. So take a slow breath now. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your hands rest. Let your eyes soften. The giants can return to their mountains. The old bones can sleep beneath the earth. The megaliths can stand in moonlight without needing to explain themselves. The forests can settle back into darkness, holding whatever they hold, asking nothing more from you tonight. If you enjoyed this curious journey, you are warmly invited to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. And if you happen to still be awake, another mystery should be waiting on the screen, ready to lead you softly into the next unknown. But for now, you can let the day loosen its grip. Let the questions drift farther away. Let the old stories become distant and calm. And wherever you are, imagine the world growing still around you. The hills are quiet. The stones are cooling. The ancient paths are empty. And somewhere far beyond the edge of memory, the giants are only shadows now, fading into the hush of night. Sleep well and good night.